Hey there, hope all is well. Want to share a couple quick thoughts. And so I actually got a couple articles in front of me, and I can't help but just stay glued into what's going on around us and anticipation of what's to come. And so one of the questions has always been the national debt. And so people love to mention that 23 trillion, it'll never be paid back. We all kind of know that by now. But yet every president for the last several administrations have always doubled the national debt. So whether when Obama came in, it was around 10. By the time he left, it was closer to 20. When Trump came in, it was, roughly 20. And then my thought process was always like, wow, to witness the doubling of this current administration would be the final nail in the coffin for what we all call the Federal Reserve note, aka the dollar. Just because at this point, especially with the 10-year Treasury yield well below 1%, and me reading articles about how it'll be advantageous for the government now to borrow $1 trillion as a fiscal stimulant injection. And it'll help the government because never before will the government be able to borrow at such low cost. And so I'm thinking like, wow, we are completely upside down in this fiscal monetary world that we're in. But to just read some of these articles and hear some of the thoughts of economists and commentators or whatnot, as if like you can continue to create all these reserves and there be no long-term consequences or consequences in the near future in general. And so article in front of me here talks about why Congress should approve a 1 trillion package to boost the economy. And so the creator of this is a Steve Leisman, and he goes on to list some things that would be a good reason as to why stimulus from our government would be needed right now, in which ultimately what it could do is it could hold off, or it could help the Federal Reserve hold off on needing to directly drop the Fed funds rates any further, which would allow them to save a little bit of ammunition for when it's an official recession. And so as a response to this current health situation that we're in, we're starting to see the impacts of a slowing down economy. And so once again, this is not like a direct response because of the health scare. Our economy has been slowing down well before this, whether it was during the trade deal, all those tariffs going back and forth, which of course all that stuff is supposed to be still in play. But yet right now with China no longer producing, it's good to say that they're not concerned with living up to those obligations of purchasing goods from us directly. And so when it comes to business here in the mainland, we're witnessing the airlines suffering, the hotel industry suffering, we have the travel industry, we have the cruise ships suffering. And so what we're witnessing now is the president, Larry Kudlow, today in a press conference was talking about the president, the White House, Steve Mnuchin. They're all kind of thinking about how they can help ease some of the pain that these industries, these corporations are having because people are canceling and making some adjustments with their consumption-based plans or whatnot.
Targeted approach, a rather micro approach, if you understand. Let's think about individuals who might lose paychecks because they had to stay home. Let's think about small businesses that might get hurt by this. Perhaps we would look at some sectors.
And so what my intentions or what my thought process is that now is the time. Over this weekend, we're going to have a lot of people meeting. The central banks will be meeting. All the finance ministers around the world will be meeting. All the governments, the president, all those people will be meeting and talking on how to have Monday not start off at all-time highs and lows when it comes to what everyone has been told or taught or believes is a measuring indicator of the health of your economy, which happens to be in the equities markets. And so we're witnessing the end of this old narrative of the economy's fine, everything is great, because by now, with all this talk of op-ed pieces of the need for $1 trillion to help stimulate the economy, can buy the Federal Reserve a little bit more time. So clearly right now, everything seems to be coming to a halt, and it's going to be hard to keep the calm amongst the population because we're going to be witnessing all types of fiscal rollouts, monetary rollouts. And so back to my topic on the debt, 23 trillion and counting is what it is right now. And if it's true, based upon prior experience, that every president usually faces a recession, and then the response has always been to allow monetary policy to lead the way. Perhaps I think that President Trump and his advisors and all the people around him might want to change that script by fiscal policy beginning to lead the way, i.e. taking advantage of these extremely low borrowing costs and allowing the Federal Reserve to directly outright purchase and subsidize Uncle Sam directly. Because once again, if this op-ed piece suggesting that we throw out $1 trillion worth of stimulus, the question would then be, with yield rates this low, what entities outside of the required entities such as hedge funds and all those people that are forced to buy government debt, but yet government debt to me personally is no longer really a safe play heading into this next couple of months, especially when Federal Reserve will be a direct purchaser, as well as our government will be a more than willing borrower moving forward, knowing that, once again, if you're not going to pay back the $23 trillion, why not just add 1 or 2 or 3 more to help slow down the public admission that we are currently having a recession right now, or all the dominoes are starting to really fall and they're hard to hide. And so beyond these articles here, I'll put them down in the link below. But yet my expectation for next week, especially if not this weekend on a Sunday, is for Larry Kudlow, President Trump, or Steve Mnuchin, one of those individuals to start talking about a certain number. And so if this op-ed piece talks about $1 trillion, perhaps, that might be the number they throw out there. So President Trump was very happy to have a signing today of that $8.3 billion fund.
So we're signing the $8.3 billion. I asked for 2.5, and I got 8.3, and I'll take it.
To combat this current health situation, as if that 8.3 will be a number that will be beneficial towards slowing down, stopping, or providing a vaccine, or whatever it is that those numbers were meant to accomplish. Obviously, it will not be enough, because that's just on the health side of things. Now we're talking about the lifeline of our economy, which happens to be all of these companies that are no longer going to be able to turn a profit. Therefore, there's going to be some ramifications from that, as far as laying off, as well as debt defaults and all the other things. So fiscal stimulus is on the way. Now, what number? Who knows? But if prior history is an indicator of possible future events, every recession, every administration tends to double the debt. So just say, for example, I don't see how this could play out, because it will not play out with a smile on investors' face, of course. But to go from $23 trillion to, say, $30 trillion was always my number. I'd imagine within his first or second term, if we got to second term, we would definitely be closer to $30 trillion. And that will be as an initial response to an official recession. And so what's at stake now is the fact that the world has realized that there's no safety in the old models of central banks directly getting involved, because all central banks are cutting at this current moment. Every central bank, even Jerome Powell doing some of his press conferences, have admitted that the toolkit they have is going to be more of the same old thing, maybe with a few new twists. But yet Jerome Powell mentioned the need for the government to really step in on a fiscal basis, to really either cut some of the expenditures or make some adjustments, because every central bank chairman, Alan Greenspan, Janet Yellen, Ben Bernanke, all the people during my time of watching and paying attention to all this, have always mentioned the unsustainability of this current model of operations, and primarily driven by all of the unfunded liabilities, which we're not even going to talk about that, because those things are definitely nowhere near being able to be repaid. And so what we're going to witness probably next week is the announcement of some type of fiscal injection to help off with the industries that are directly impacted now. But this is just the beginning. We're not even really, a week or 2 or 3 into the impacts that this health situation will have on this country here. Nevertheless, being able to put a number on what it would take to keep some of those businesses afloat. So they're talking about some tax incentives and all types of things that's being mentioned. But at the end of the day, there's no limit to the amount of currency that will be brought into existence to be thrown at some of these problems, as if the currency itself is going to be good enough to bring all these companies out of their current situations. They're only going to be adding, gasoline. The currency we're about to witness is about to be pumped into the system will be considered as gasoline to a fire. And what happens when you throw gasoline on a fire? It burns faster and harder and with no end in sight. And so I wanted to take a minute to share my thoughts on this and get your guys' thoughts on this. So we're currently at 23 trillion. Fiscal stimulus is coming directly, and it might be led before the Federal Reserve steps in the next week or two or whenever. And it also depends on how Monday starts off. But I'm anticipating some type of number being thrown out by the end of this weekend or beginning of next week as a way of just throwing a little gasoline on a fire. Now I realize that it's going to spark even more of a blaze, because there is no number that can keep this system afloat without it destroying your purchasing power, without destroying our purchasing power. How bad will this get over the weekend? Will there be a fiscal stimulus? What is your number? What do you think that initial number will be? Will it be 1 trillion or something mild or what? I'm curious to find out. Leave a comment down below. If you find this important, definitely subscribe to this channel, share this information, because once again, the more of this excess creation of currency is brought into existence, the more competition it creates for you, especially if you're dependent upon receiving some type of payout in this very same currency, whether it be right now or in the future. There's going to be a problem because the math no longer adds up. That's it. See ya.